friends, Kamala here from Creative Friends Decant. So today we're going to jump into Creative Space with XTool and make a project. Let's go! So jumping into XTool Creative Space is really a fun way to make a project. Every day things are getting better. I said that in my last beginners video, and we now can weld text. So there's all kinds of fun things you can do. So let's start by what I would do if I want to make my own design. I would start combining shapes to make other shapes. So that's literally what designing on software is. So it's making shapes and then combining other shapes to make a new shape. So I made this canvas here, which is one thing I want to make sure everybody knows, is you can come down here to the bottom and work on separate canvases. I find this really important anytime I'm doing things. If you have followed me and learned how to use your Cricut with me, then it's a place that I put my helper shapes, which is great. So what I did here is I took all the combining features and set them up on a mat. So all three of these stars, if you place them like this and selected all of them and chose combine and unite, they would unite where they touch together. So now they're holding hands simultaneously. All right, so I can show, I'll click that, but I want to give you a second here and I want to remind you to take a screenshot. I set this up for myself when I first started using XTool because it was just an easy thing to look at and know what each of these do instead of the guessing game, for me at least. All right, so now hopefully you got your screenshot. Last chance. We're gonna select all three of these stars and I'm gonna choose the unite like I wrote there. And that's what it does. I'm gonna go ahead and undo this because I want to share this file in our Facebook group, Creative Friends Decant on Facebook. So subtracting. So I grabbed the zigzag to kind of make it broken heart, right? And placed it where I wanted and whoops, and then chose subtract, and this is what came out. All right, unite at overlap is another super fun one. So for this example, I just grabbed two circles and overlapped them to make almost a teardrop, which I think is just a fun way to show how creative that using all of these combining tools in XTool Creative Space can be. All right, let's talk about the last one, subtract at overlap. It is the one that I think's the most confusing, and I think as a beginner with XTool Creative Space, it's one that can scare you because it does nothing. Okay, so that's my opinion, but it does nothing. You can select, you can put shapes in any way, and you can choose to use it, and it does nothing. So I got to diving into like, why does it do this? Well, basically, if you were going to, let's say, make a donut, you could choose that. It would attach both your, I've got them up here. It would attach both your shapes together and keep them that way while you worked on the rest of your project. So there's my more like a tire, not a donut, but super simple donut. Please, for the love of all things, get some icing on that by using your combining shapes. It works. All right, so I'm going to center this up because I want you to remember to always use those centering tools when you want things precise. The grid map really does not, it does a fairly good job. It does not do horrible. It's decent. But your alignment tools are, you should be using those before you're locking things in place, my opinion. But I see a lot of things a little wonky that could have been fixed by using alignment tools, including my own projects, no judgment. So basically, if I was to choose the subtracted overlap, it did nothing compared to if I made both of these. So let's undo. So here's both of these. They're where I want them, and I grouped them. Because a group is still going to cut both these lines and your center is going to come out, so is the subtracted overlap. So unless someone else has figured out something more that subtracted overlap does, then that's all I can see it does, and so I find it easier to just group them together. So now I'm going to throw you in fast mode with some music, and you're going to watch me use these tools to create some fun arrows, and then we'll talk about it. So let's do one more arrow with a few more shapes. We have done lots of combining and outlining, which are my favorite things. Those are my favorite tools. I use them the most. So we're going to grab another rectangle here and unlock it so I can stretch it out. Then we're going to need a triangle again for our nose. I don't know, tip of the arrow. And I really think I'm going to want this one roundy, especially because we've done a couple with the pointed edges. So when I get this close to the size I want, I'm going to go ahead and use that outline and round up my edges. And I can combine these two now. So unite them together. And now they're sealed. Now, let's look at this one and play a little bit differently with shapes. So I'm going to, well, let's think of this as half the wing and how big I'm going to kind of want it. All right, and then I'm going to copy and paste by reflecting it. So we're going to reflect it horizontal. And then let's combine these. I've got to make sure they overlap. I'm good at having to redo that one. Unite. Beautiful. And let's flip this whole thing 90 degrees now. Whoop, I needed to go 180. And maybe is a hair big. All right, and then I'm going to line this centered with this shape. So if my little grid lines that are helpful aren't coming up, definitely use your alignment tools. That's another one that's very important. And then we're ready to unite this whole thing. And there's, I'm going to undo. I don't like how this curves in here. So I'm going to make sure I take my arrow far enough in to cover that curve. Just a bit. Just so it goes a little into my arrow. You know what? Another thing that will help is some outline, so some curve on this part. Let's get an outline and delete the Sharpie one. Whoops. Now I'm going to shrink that back down just a little. That will help those curved lines blend. And remember, you can also unlock here before I quit. I'll show you. You can unlock these shapes and change the sizing of them as well. So if you wanted this to be a double arrow coming off, you could easily do that. Whoops, not by cutting, copying. And doing two. So let's combine this together, making sure it's aligned first. And anytime I'm hesitant, I always align and then unite. And there's another fun style. I still think I would undo and fix that curve just a little bit. All right, let's finish up our arrows with some text. So one thing I do want to say is I like to keep things working as separate shapes until I'm for sure I'm ready to proceed to the next step. And even then, oftentimes I will copy and paste. You can paste it here, or Don't forget this little plus sign down here does a whole nother canvas, and that's a great place to store helper shapes. If you followed me from Cricut design videos, which we still do, I call them helper shapes. If you could give us a like and a subscribe, I try not to say that very often, but it's huge help, so we greatly appreciate it. So now I have my helper shapes saved. Combine all of these together. So just select them all and unite. And the reason I like to do this is this arrow, I want to add some fun, 3D effects. So I wanted a couple of these pieces, and I will cut these all separately, but it will 3D out this arrow. I'm going to talk about the different types of cuts. So right now we're wanting definitely this outside line to be a cut line. We're going to cut out of wood. So I'm going to go ahead and select my material over here to wood. And I want it to cut. This I also want to cut. So if you cut and you leave it here, it will cut this piece out of this piece. If you want it to be 3D, you have to take it to the side so that it will cut it separately. All right, so that's those. Now let's talk about adding text. You can do the same thing. You can add text with a score line or by cutting it out, or sometimes I do both on a project. So the first thing you need to do is type your text in and choose your text style. And this will depend on what kind of, or your text font, your typeface, and it will depend on what kind of fonts you have on your computer. You'll have some, but choices are different somewhat. And as of right now, our XTool Creative Space does not allow us to know where they're coming from. So, but it's not a big deal. You just need to look through and decide which one you want for your project. So let's throw some text on here, maybe a couple different fonts, and then work on finishing up our arrow. Creative Space is really easy to work with. It just takes a little practice, just like anything else new. So skinny fonts like I'm using for the eggs or laid daily, those I would recommend engraving or scoring because they don't cut very well. Another fun thing to spruce up your designs with XTool Creative Space is to use SVGs that you've bought before. So if you've used like design bundles, which is where this chicken and these feathers came from, and you've bought those files, you can use them in Creative Space as well. Just remember to watch commercial license and things like that, and buy from a reputable person. I have to throw that plea in as a designer. So we are just going to place this chicken and these fun feathers to enhance my little sign here. I'm also going to get my holes placed so that I can attach a hanger and attach feathers. And I like to use like lines or other shapes to do my measuring to make those things work out perfectly. And I also tend to like about a 1/4 inch circle. So that's what I use a lot. Next, you want to double or triple check that all your lines are set correctly. So your lines set to cut or score or engrave, just make sure everything's set correctly. And I also like to arrange things to save space. So that way, and so I know it's going to fit on my material and I'm using the least amount of material. So trying not to be wasteful. The origin over here shows you where your laser is going to start. I do occasionally change that like to center or somewhere else. Most of the time I do use it on the top left. And always run your frame. So I'm going to click frame, and then I'm going to meet you with my camera at my laser, and we will get framing. So once you've hit frame on your system, this light starts to blink and you're ready to frame your material. So I'm going to go ahead and place my material inside, and I'm looking for this laser light that's really hard to pick up on camera. this angle will help a little bit with that. The laser beam down here, and it's really hard to see on the video, but the center of those crosshairs is where you line up for your project to start. Because I'm using a new piece of wood, I'm just going to start my laser in the top left corner and as snug as I can. And I'm going to check my frame to make sure that it doesn't do this. So our project is too long for this board, so we need to decrease the size and rerun our frame. So I'm rerunning that frame and doing another check here. I buy my wood from XTool, and really you need to work in 11.75 inches. That's about perfect. So now it's perfect, so I can change that to framing complete and process, and we'll start our laser. All right, so the light is flashing again after I hit start, and we're ready to hit start. If you're using any type of air assist or anything else, definitely turn it on now. So shut the lid, I anchor down, that's how my system is made, and we're gonna let it go. It is definitely recommended that you do not walk away from this machine while it's going. It will tell you that on when you clicked through, and as always, all safety protocols are on you. Definitely read your safety manuals. All right, let's see how we're gonna finish this up. A big transport board when you have a long ways to go, not that I have a long ways to go, but is really handy. So this actually just popped out of here really easily. But it did kind of, I've never had a board do that. That's an odd cut. Oh, nope, yes I have. So it was on me, this, and you have to watch that, but this leaf was too close. So when you're trying to snug up to save space, it can sometimes hurt you. I think we're going to be able to buff that one out, but just, you know, they do have to be separate. All right, all these pieces came out great. You can use an X-Acto knife, and it helps if you flip your board over and kind of X-Acto knife some things if you need to. Just be careful because it's kind of somewhat dangerous. Maybe only if you're me. So next I'm going to clean up my pieces here. So it's knocking anything out, sanding these. So it looked like this S was a little rough. So a nail file is my favorite tool for doing that kind of, you know, cleaning things up. But sandpaper of any kind that you're comfortable with or you have will do it. So I will say I like how the lighter wood engraves. I'm not a fan of how this engraved on this walnut wood. There are a couple tricks to helping fix it, and I don't know if it'll work, but we're gonna try. Sometimes it works even on the basswood, or if a customer has a piece of wood, I kind of, you know, you may have to fix something. So a sponge brush and some stain, I love. So they're kind of a cross between mica powder and stain, but they're stain. But I buy it's dry stain. I buy it in these little packs. And it's just dry stain. And then you mix it with water. And it's one of my favorite crafting hacks. I don't know, wood hacks. All right, so I've got some on my brush here, and I'm just going to run it across. And then you can use a rag to clean it up, or a dry paper towel. And sometimes, so I've got that. You can get just the engraving to pop a little bit extra. And it did make it a little easier to read in this case. Let me finish up my stain here. I may have let that stain soak just a little bit too long, but it did help it, but not as, this walnut wood did not, well, actually the stain helped it a lot more, and I like it now. It's very rustic looking, so if that's the look you were going for. But I do like it now. You can at least read it. I can read it. You can read it on the camera. I can read it just as well as you can on the camera, really. So at least now you can read it. So the stain kind of helps with that. You can also use paint to finish these things up. That is how I'm going to do the fresh letters. I'm just going to finish staining and painting, and let's check this out. We're almost done. So I have added this file along with the next canvas has these codes if you didn't want to make them yourself. But I've added this canvas with all these arrows to my XTool community space page. So find me there, Creative Mom Camilla, and that project will be loaded just like a few others I have loaded. And you are welcome to use these. Other designers also load. There's all kinds of fun stuff. Let's check out our finished product. The paint on top, the stain made those words pop even more. What a fun way to just fix it. We created this arrow together using XTool Creative Space. I can't wait to see what kind of shapes you combine to make new shapes. Have a joyful day, friends. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.